Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to episode 50 of Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
And JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Friday.
This week on the show, Gamecock baseball and softball, as well as Cock Hockey's playoff run so far.
And later, conference tournament previews and predictions for NCAA men's basketball.
Be sure to stick around for head-to-head pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
If you are a person in the Carolinas with functioning legs and a football jersey, please report to Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte.
We watched Ice Bryce Young do his thing and lead the Panthers to their second win of the season.
I think Matthew McConaughey and Dabo Swinney are very similar. I feel like maybe one day McConaughey could play Dabo in a movie.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
This is just what football is about, man. Two teams that run the football, play defense.
That guy's Superman sometimes, dude. We've got to pick the Yankees, otherwise I'd be kicked out of my own family.
Yankees.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
And this past weekend, Clemson really humbled the Gamecocks in the Palmetto Series, ending their undefeated streak, and Spencer really kind of giving this program a reality check as to where they currently stand at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Again, I think if we had predicted the series, I would have picked Clemson to win it, but getting swept, not exactly...
Looking relatively lifeless outside of the Friday night game, too.
And that should have been your hardest game. You know, you go on the road to Doug Kingsmore Stadium, and really you're about 2 feet short of tying the game twice in the ninth inning. So that one definitely stung. But the other two games, JP, the bats just couldn't get going. And really, Clemson relied on some late hitting to score. But, I mean, honestly, both starting pitching staffs, I would say, performed relatively well in this one.
No, yeah, South Carolina, especially Jake McCoy on Saturday, he had over double-digit strikeouts. Was really impressive, but yeah, I mean, it's not for a lack of opportunity. They had guys in scoring position all weekend long. They were getting traffic on the base pass, whether it was a base hit or a lot of walks. They couldn't get it done. They couldn't get them home. And it's the same thing as last year. It was a lack of situational hitting. That really cost this team, and now, you know, they bounced back by doing what they should have done against Davidson and handing the Citadel their first loss. And so, you know, they get one last non-conference series before things start kicking off.
Absolutely. I believe it's going to be Oklahoma next weekend. We're not going to be here to cover it. We're on spring break here next week. But again, let's take a look at the starting rotation for this weekend series against Morehead State. That's who comes to town to Founders Park. JP, and this should be taking care of business.
It really should.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have three starting pitchers like this against a team that's not very good, you just gotta. There's no room for error here. You know, it's like you're risking like total nationwide embarrassment if you don't follow up what Clemson did to you by a strong finish to non-conference play. Before the SEC opens up next weekend in Founders. Yeah,
and again, they've been good in the non-conference. Outside of Clemson, they haven't lost. They've dealt with their inferior opponents. But again, in that Davidson game, I was watching that from home, and JP, a lot of errors there, just stuff that needs to get cleaned up, especially before SEC play. You know, maybe Morehead State doesn't make you pay for it, but teams in the SEC will. You know, they're far too good to be making silly mistakes in. So I think this team's just got to find their groove. You got to take care of business this weekend and in the midweek before the Sooners come to town. And JP, at home, you really want to start off conference play taking that series in front of your home crowd.
Yeah, it would help a lot. You know, welcoming Oklahoma to the SEC at one of the hardest places to play in the SEC. And it's an opportunity against the top 15 to get the mojo back right where you could have if you had taken 2 of 3 from Clemson. But not the only diamond sport we're talking about today is South Carolina still has an undefeated squad out there. Wednesday, Gamecock softball tied its best start in program history, getting to 20-0 on the season. Spencer, I mean, they're up to number 11 in the polls. I've seen them in top 10 at other places. And Ashley Chastain-Woodard's first season as head coach, coming down from UNC Charlotte, they have just been. I mean, they've been awesome. There's no blemish.
They've been perfect, yeah, so far. And you know what I think is so awesome is, I mean, this team, one of the 2 undefeated softball teams in the country. Well, JP, they go on the road to face the other undefeated softball team in the country in the Oklahoma Sooners. It's going to be an awesome battle between these two. You know, the first SEC series of the season. You go on the road to number 2 Oklahoma, who's been really the dynasty in college softball. JP, I don't even know how long they've been on top, but it's been a while.
Time. I mean, they don't lose, when they lose games, it's an event, and that should tell you everything there is to know. And you know, we talked about this on Gamecock Game Day last night, but success
Friends
for this,
of the show.
Success for this softball squad, I don't think it's necessarily rested in like how many times you beat Oklahoma. It's more so proving that you belong, and so I'm excited to see them because I think this team could definitely do that. They have the talent. They do everything well. They're not relying on any one particular part of their team for success, and so it should be fun.
It should be really fun. And I think the expectations, you know, were a little unclear. You weren't sure what you were going to make of it. You know, it's a first-year head coach coming into the hardest conference to play softball. Gamecocks are off to a 20-0 start. Again, I think even if they fall to Oklahoma, even if they get swept, I think well, as long as you try and keep it competitive, that would be great. But again, they're already punching above their weight, at least from what I think we would have projected. Just to mention a couple of their key players, Rhoades is just absolutely mashing the ball right now. She's got a homer in each of her last 5 games, 9 on the season, almost got 30 RBIs already. And it's going to be an interesting weekend for Quincy Lilio, the Oklahoma transfer, who's just an on-base machine for this squad. JP, this is a really fun team. They get it done on both sides of the ball. And I think we're going to be tuning in this weekend. You know, there's a lot of basketball we're going to get to later. It should be a great series, but we're going to move on to another team. We're going to move on to a different surface. Let's touch on the ice here as Gamecock Hockey's began their AAU tournament play in Jacksonville. They started on Wednesday. They played each of the last 2 days, and they play again tonight, JP. But a bad loss last night to Delaware. Kind of just bad luck there at the end, but they had all the chances to win this one.
Yes, they did. I mean, they had plenty of high danger chances in overtime. Delaware's goalie, you know, we played the Blue Hens last year, and they put up a decent fight. Now they're facing off in the National Tournament. They got their revenge last night with an overtime winner off a shot that ricocheted so hard it gave Delaware a 1-0 against Tyler Tomoyan.
It's really just horrible luck because the Gamecocks, the entire overtime period, I mean,
they own possession. I think it's weird that we're doing 3-on-3 overtime to decide like national championships. I think that's a little weird.
I know that has been the AAU's rule for a while now because you know we see it whenever games go to overtime at the Plex.
Yeah, it's you know, in my soapbox, it's one thing for like the regular season. It's the other for like you know, a tournament. But they're not out of the woods yet, despite the overtime loss, the heartbreaker. They get a chance against the second highest seed in their pool, Farmingdale State, who's actually a really solid team, Spencer.
They are really good. I mean, they took down Delaware 6-1, took down Alabama last night 5-1. And, I mean, this squad, you know, if they win, they're in. If Gamecock Hockey wins, they get to move on. So it's really...
And I think Gamecock Hockey needs to win in regulation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Farmingdale has 4 points. Carolina has 3. You get 2 for a win.
You need an outright win.
Yep. All right. Well, we got 60 minutes.
That's why, you know, they got 2 points from the win over Alabama, Gamecock Hockey, by the way. And, you know, then they picked up 1 point for just taking it to overtime against Delaware. So they'll need a win. But Farmingdale State, led by Thomas Konkowski, he's second in points in AAU to John Riggins. So they've got some guys out there and really have been the top dogs in Pool C so far. So it's going to be a really tough matchup. 5:15 puck drop tonight. JP, you think the boys get it done?
I think they do, man. This team, they have that it factor. They get it done. They are just, you know, when the going gets tough, you saw it last night. John Riggins had the goal to tie and sent to overtime. They had so many chances there. This team, you just can't keep them down. They don't lose back-to-back games lightly.
And I think this definitely has lit a fire underneath him.
Absolutely.
We talked to Coach after senior night, and he was saying, you know, if the team mentally is like in the right headspace, they can beat anybody in the country. And I think sometimes that's the hard part, especially when you've got so much talent on the ice. It's a little hard to keep it straight and narrow. We saw some bad penalties. some unfortunate passes that led to Delaware goals, because really they didn't do anything super impressive. They just played fundamentally good hockey, and sometimes whenever South Carolina isn't, that's the easiest way to beat them, and that's what we saw last night. I also think they bounce back, get a win, and hopefully we get to see this team move on in chance of a repeat. You can watch it on AAU College Hockey's YouTube. Again, all their social medias will be plugging the link, so definitely check that out. I know we'll be supporting the guys from home. It should be awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm excited, but don't go anywhere just quite yet. We've got college basketball coverage coming up right after the break.
And the best rivalry, I can't speak. Best rivalry in college basketball is back. Tomorrow, the number 2 Duke Blue Devils look to storm Chapel Hill and give UNC the boot. I mean, this one, last time around, they did just that. I mean, they got an 87-70 win in Cameron Indoor Stadium.
It wasn't that close, really.
Oh, it was a 22-point game at half. Very disheartening for UNC. But they've got a lot of film on what not to do, what they can do better, because frankly, Duke just handed it to them last time.
They did indeed, Spencer, and but UNC ever since then they've really kind of flipped the switch. They've been clobbering teams on the road too. It's been really exciting to kind of see. They're returning to the form I think a lot of people thought they would be at the beginning of the year.
And they're right on the edge.
They really are. We talked about it last week on Bubble Watch, and they continue to take care of business, but they need this one win, Spencer.
They
really do. As we look at the visiting team tonight.
We will. We're going to start with
tomorrow. The Duke Blue Devils, who really need no introduction.
They are, again, they could lose this game, I think, by 100 and still get a 1 seed in the tournament. They are truly an unbelievable team so far, 27-3. Their 1 loss is at Clemson. It was closer than the 6 points. Cooper Flagg, slipped there in, I think, a 2-point game. And really, 2 of their losses have come when he's just slipped and lost the ball.
In Mario Kart.
Yeah, he's.
But for Duke, as dominant a season as they've had, if they lose this one, they could end up as the 3 seed in the ACC tournament. If they lose and Louisville and Clemson win, Duke gets bumped down all the way to 3. That's how dominant.
Right.
That's how dominant all 3 of those teams have kind of been. I mean, they never played Louisville, I don't think, because of the bloated conference schedule, and they lost to Clemson. So that would be, hilarious. That's what I want. I'm very biased because I just whatever thing that can happen to Duke that will be the funniest. I want that to happen. For Duke, it's not only a chance to secure an outright conference title, they also have the opportunity to knock UNC out of the field, or at least knock them back down a couple pegs heading into the ACC
UNC
tournament.
would probably have to win the conference tournament if they don't beat Duke. And again, they're 4th in the ACC, so the road wouldn't be as hard as it could be. For Duke, though, again, it's the same story all year long. Cooper Flagg leads them in about every major stat. He's unstoppable, but he's got a great group of guys around him. JP, what I think has been so impressive about this team is the way they all collectively play defense. I don't think it gets talked about enough. They've got a guy for everything, but as a team, they're just tough to break down, and they've been murdering opponents as of late. Over their last 5 games, they're outscoring opponents by 166 points. Their total point differentials in the 300s in their favor. They're the best regular season team since, 1998-99 Duke.
Yeah, they're the best team since Duke.
It's crazy.
But they're not the only team taking the floor Saturday night.
That's right.
Let's take a look at the North Carolina Tar Heels, who will be trying to match them. And it's really kind of it's a battle of philosophies. RJ Davis, he's the 2nd all-time leading scorer at North Carolina.
Which is crazy to say.
And he's been there forever. He stuck it out through thick and thin. He was there when they sent off Coach K to retirement in the Final Four.
That's where this pitcher's from.
And now he gets a chance to really cement his legacy against the Duke Blue Devils. Really, if you're a North Carolina player, you can't really ask for anything else. They have just taken care of business. They have been in most of their games where they've lost to these top-tier opponents. They led Florida late. Yep. They led Dayton late. They led Auburn. They
lost to Kansas by a couple points.
Yeah, they led Kansas. I couldn't remember in Maui if it was Kansas or Auburn.
I think it was Kansas. But they've also, I don't remember if
Michigan State.
Michigan State,
God. I mean, the UCLA game was they won was down to the wire. So this team has just been in so many of these fights, and you got to think eventually, if you're going to get one, it's going to come here at home.
It has to. That's the thing. It has
to.
If you want to get in the tournament and leave, no doubt, you have to beat Duke at home. I mean, it's what you said.
No one could argue with it. It would be the best win in college basketball, I think.
Yeah, and it'd be easily their best win of the season. They're desperately needing a win, and a win over a team that's been so dominant as Duke. Again, nothing would look better than that. And for a team that's just right on the edge, who's going to discount, a win over Duke?
No, exactly. But UNC is just one of many teams vying for some of these spots in the NCAA tournament. Selection Sunday is right on the horizon with conference tournaments starting now. Here are 3 teams you're going to see in our last bubble watch of the season. Spencer, I know it's kind of sad. This is my favorite segment personally. We're going to start with the mid-major. We usually keep them for last, but we're going to start with the Boise State Broncos. Spencer, a team that started strong, hit some roadblocks, but now they've come up as of late. They've got some good metrics there. They have 2 great non-conference wins against St. Mary's and Clemson. I mean, talk about scheduling.
I mean, you talk about 2 teams that haven't lost much on the season at all, and Boise State has a win over both of them, so very impressive stuff there. They've got one last home game tonight against Colorado. It's either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tonight.
It is tonight.
Okay,
the Rams. There you go.
And the Rams are a team that are no slouch themselves. Yeah. The Mountain West is always fun to watch. Tyson Dagenhart has been just unreal for them. The big man scoring 18 a game, shooting over 50% from the field. They've won 9 of 10. But Spencer, they're not quite in the field yet, are they?
They're not just yet. I think, take care of business against Colorado State at home. They've been a really good team at home on the year as a whole. So you got to take care of business. And then moving forward, a good performance in the Mountain West Championship, Conference Tournament Championship.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I'm losing my mind
Same
over
thing.
here. That would be a really good place for them, and I think that would put them in a good spot. But again, they're not the only team here. As Indiana, another team on the bubble, plays in one of the hardest conferences. I mean, is the Big Ten the best conference of basketball? It's very close. It's them, I think, or the SEC that have been.
I think for both these conferences, we have to wait and see because they're both notorious droppers in the NCAA tournament. They're both going to get a lot of people in.
Yeah,
and we'll
100%.
just have to see what they do. They underperform their expected win totals more than any other conferences of the last.
Very true.
But this Indiana team, what a weird story they've had. I have to read this verbatim. They started 13-3. After a tough season last year, Mike Woodson and company, they looked like they had kind of restored the feeling in Bloomington. Well, then they lost 7 of 8. Mike Woodson announces he's stepping down at the end of the season. And ever since then, they've beaten Michigan State and Purdue, 2 of the best teams in the country, along with 2 other wins.
I think it's Michigan State's last loss.
It is on the road, and it really wasn't close. For Indiana, went into East Lansing and got that big-time win. They have good metrics. They have a couple of quad 1 wins. And Spencer, it's really looking like it's win in, you're in for the Hoosiers against Ohio State. Trying to do, I guess, what the football team couldn't.
Yeah, that's right.
But, much like the football team, I think we're going to hear a lot of arguments that they don't really deserve to be there. Although the football team did, not so sure about this team.
18-12 is not your ideal record to be on the edge of the bubble. I know the Big Ten, it's a pretty strong conference, but again, they're under 500, 9-10. So a win would put them right at 500 on the season.
Ain't 20, you'd be looking at 20 wins if you can win one in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, so I think that's where they're going to need to show up. You want to leave no doubt, better your case a little bit, go and win a couple games in the conference tournament, because otherwise,
you don't want to leave it up to the committee.
And some bid stealers. Last year we saw a lot of teams get kicked out. I mean, a couple 2 or 3 seeds that aren't projected in win the conference tournament. Indiana's chances are done. So you got to take care of business. And again, don't leave it in the hands of the committee. They need to win a couple games. You got to expect Umar Ballo to have a big few games for them going forward.
Indiana, they turned back the clock. We've seen it with Trace Jackson-Davis and Khalil Ware, and now Ballo. If you're a big man and you want to get touches down low and play like you're Patrick Ewing, go to Indiana, man.
Yeah.
They
17-second post up.
They have fun with it. Hey, it leads to some wins more often than not. But our last team here, our Bubble Watch, is one that's kind of flown under the radar this whole season. We've only talked about them once, and that was when they defeated South Carolina in the Fort Myers tip-off. We're talking about the Xavier Musketeers of the Big East. Spencer, they've kind of, just treaded water this whole year. They don't really have a ton of big wins. They're much like North Carolina. They're 1-9 against quad ones. But much like North Carolina, taking care of business. And Zach Freeman.
Hot at the right time.
Yeah, they've gotten hot at the right time. They're on a 6-game win streak, which includes a 22-point win over the Creighton Blue Jays. And they're really led by the senior Zach Freemantle, averaging 17 and 7 and a block per game. And he centers this team a lot.
And that's what position he plays. The big man down low, he does a really, really good job of enforcing his will. They feed him a ton of touches down low, but he can also create for the rest of his team. But he has a lot of gravity. He draws a ton of attention to him. So the rest of Xavier playing around him, it's been a good system. And Fremantle was injured earlier in the year, and that's when Xavier was really struggling.
Which the committee will take that into account, especially because he's come back and they've played so well.
Yeah.
It's an important. Their last game, you got to take care of business against Providence. That would be a bad loss at home.
Yeah.
They've had a season to forget. But for Xavier, they're a team that maybe kind of like Boise State. They're going to have to do some damage in their conference tournament. Maybe nab a win over a Marquette or Creighton again, or St. John's, UConn. Even Villanova, the metrics still really like them. There's no shortage of opportunities for good wins. And if they beat Providence, they're 13 and 7. Only one team has ever missed the NCAA tournament while being 6 games or better over 500 in Big East Conference play. Last year, Seton Hall Pirates.
I knew it was coming.
Who went on and won the NIT, which is, you look at the bubble this year, and you got to feel, last year we had one of the most stacked bubbles of all time.
The snub list was double digits.
Wake Forest didn't get in. Seton Hall didn't get in. Indiana State didn't get in. Even Georgia, a lot of teams last year. And then, even New Mexico barely made it in. They won like 26 games, Spencer. And this year, we're talking about like 17 and 14 Oklahoma and Texas. And
Ohio State's projected on the bubble.
Oh, my
the
God,
team Indiana's playing. And rest in peace to Michi Johnson. They are horrible.
Yeah.
But we're going to move on a little bit from ranting on the bubble. Again, goodbye to Bubble Watch. It was much beloved here on the 50th episode. But we'll be on spring break and unable to cover conference tournaments as they're happening next week. But we're going to cover them right now, give you our predictions for winners and auto bids today. And the first 4 of 8 champions we'll be covering. Let's take a look at them here.
And this is by the top 8 conferences in terms of Ken Palm's adjusted efficiency. So we're not sliding anyone. And 4 looked clean on graphics.
It's the ratings.
So we're just going with the top 8. Starting, of course, with the ACC, a conference that they really hit their stride in March more than anyone else. Spencer, you're going with Duke, huh?
I am going with Duke. And again, I'm not going to spoil my UNC Duke pick. We'll save that for the hit segment Pick'ems. But, this team is just really good. They've got a double bye. So you only got to win a couple games. I just think they're going to get it done. I think the ACC is pretty top-heavy. I think it's Duke, Louisville, Clemson, and we'll see how UNC looks against Duke tomorrow night. But those top 3 are really, really good. The rest of the ACC, I don't expect anyone to make a run here. I think it'll be one of those 3 or 4 teams to take it home.
SMU and Wake Forest are fake. They don't exist.
Yeah,
Stanford lost to Notre Dame, they're done.
I'm just going to go with the favorite here. I'm going to go with Duke. I think they're the best team.
And I think that your pick and my pick are going to meet in that title game.
I'm
going with the Clemson Tigers. They're a team, they've never won the ACC tournament. They've been there since the beginning. They have the worst win percentage in the ACC tournament of any team in the entire conference. They're sitting at barely over 30%. And last year they got ran out of the building by Boston College. It's the one thing that Brad Brownell has never been able to conquer in his time at Clemson. And this is the best Clemson team, truthfully, I think ever. And if any team was going to do it, I think it's them. They play total unselfish basketball, but they have guys who can get you a bucket when they need. They already beat Duke. They will likely need to get revenge against Louisville if they're going to make it to the ACC title game. But I think they're entirely capable of doing that. And I think, truthfully, they're a team that they just get hot at the right time. They're playing really good right now. They shoot the lights out.
they're a couple possessions away from being a 1 seed.
No,
They
yeah,
don't
I
talk
mean,
about that, but 3 of their losses are in overtime by like a possession or 2 less. If they didn't lose to South Carolina,
I mean, the Memphis loss isn't bad,
Yeah.
but that's overtime.
Yeah.
Then they lost back-to-back overtime games to Memphis and South Carolina. Then they lost an overtime game to notorious Torpedo or Georgia Tech. And other than that, their losses are on the road against Louisville and on the road against Boise State. 2 really good teams. This team is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's why I'm picking them to win the ACC as we move on now to the Big Ten. Spencer, we're both picking teams that when you think about the Big Ten, they don't really come to mind.
I'm not picking my favorite Big Ten team. You know, I'm a Spartan, true and true. And, well, you know, whenever it comes to pick our bracket, I think I'll have a little bit more faith in Michigan State here. But I think Oregon's a team that's really hot right now. They've won 6 straight games. Shellstad and Biddle are leading this team. But Oregon just has a penchant for the clutch. Really, you know, they've maybe had more game winners than any other team. You know, we'll need to check the metrics on that, but it seems like they're winning the game in overtime or under a minute to go.
Or like massive comebacks like against
week.
Wisconsin.
Exactly. It's weird, and conference tournaments are the weirdest places of them all. So I think the Ducks are going to come out on top in what's going to be a really fun tournament. But you're going with the Turtles, aren't you?
I am. I'm going with the Maryland Terrapins. You know, Dana Altman and Kevin Willard are 2 coaches that really kind of thrive in conference tournament scenarios. We've seen Dan Altman do it for years in the Pac-12. We saw Kevin Willard do it at Seton Hall in the Big East. Now I think the Crab Five, Derek Queen, one of the best freshmen in college basketball. They have maybe the best starting 5 in basketball. Their bench leaves a lot to be desired. But frankly, in tournament scenarios, you don't got to go to the bench as much. They've been training for this.
Yeah.
I think that this is a team that can certainly go on a run. And when you have a top flight starting 5, sometimes one of your bench players, they just get hot. And that's what I think they can ride that to a Big Ten title.
And we saw that with UNC a couple years ago when they made it to the Final Four, or the championship game. I mean, it was a 5-man rotation, pretty capped. Nobody else was touching the floor. And really, that's just, if that's what you got to do, you put out your best 5 no matter what. Maryland's accustomed to it, which I think is a good thing. You know, you're not doing something you're unfamiliar with in the most crucial games of the season.
Kevin Willard coaches every game, for better or worse, like it's like this round of 32. He's never gotten past the round of 32. But boy, I mean, he is mentally trying. I love him to death. He's a great coach. And I think, truthfully, when we do pick our brackets, I think this is the year he does it. This Maryland team is so much fun. They are going to be
Stamp it, Barry.
Hey, I think that they are a Sharpie for at least a couple wins in March. But now we're going to move on to the Big 12. Spencer, I mean, it's really kind of a 2-horse race here.
I would say it's a 3-horse race, just throwing Iowa State in there.
That's
Again,
true.
they're still very good, but I'm going with the Red Raiders here. Two of their losses are to Houston with about 30 seconds left. You know, I mean, they've lost by 1. I can't remember how close the second game was, but it was close.
I went to like a million overtimes.
I was gonna say, I don't remember if it was 1 point also, but I mean, they've been so close. I think they get it done because this is a team that can get hot like no other. JT Toppin is unbelievable for this team, averaging about 18 and 9. But they've got a lot of shooters around them. I think this team is very, very dangerous. They're a pretty common sleeper pick here in March. But I think they're going to win the Big 12 tournament and really fight on the cusp of a 3 seed here.
Yeah, and truthfully, I think it would be a crying shame if we don't get a third matchup between these two. And that's what I think happens. I think Houston and Texas Tech face off. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in the same year, but Houston has made doing hard look easy since joining the Big 12. I think
Well
LJ
said.
Cryer is just one of the best players, one of the more underrated players in the country. That's why I'm going with the Cougars, man. They lost their first 2 games when they joined the Big 12, and everyone was like, well, you're not in the American anymore. And ever since, I think they're 33-5 in the conference.
It's the same thing also with Duke. They lost a couple games on neutral floors and have 1 or 2 conference losses. This team is unbelievable. I think the Cougars are definitely going to be a 1 seed and are just they're unbelievable. I think this is the year they've been more for real than any other year.
Yeah, and
we might
eager.
say that every year, but
well, it's true. They're eager to prove people wrong. I mean, even the year they made the Final Four, they didn't beat a team that was a single-digit seed. It's not their fault, but that's just how it happened, and so people are going to
discredit it. Yeah.
Exactly, but our last pick here on this page, the Big East, the granddaddy of them all, the crown jewel of conference tournaments, under the lights at Madison Square Garden. Spencer's picking the home team.
Of course I am, man. I mean, Patino has reshaped this Red Storm squad. He's hit the portal incredibly well. They are playing incredibly well as of right now. I mean, a couple losses, and they could be talked about from other teams. They could be talked about in a one-seed conversation. They've got a big game at Marquette this weekend. But, man, I think this team is just primed to go on a run deep into March. Right now, they're projected to play Louisville in round 2 if the higher seeds win, and that would just be cinema. But I think the Johnnies get it done at home. They've been selling out the Garden. I mean, they're really turning back the clock to the Chris Mullin days of just St. John's being at the top of basketball. I think they topped the Big East this year, and I think they make the deepest run out of anybody else in this conference.
You know, it's a conference that has really come up as of late. I mean, they're just like the ACC. These two conferences are intertwined. You suddenly look at it and you're like, wow, St. John's, Creighton, Marquette, UConn, Villanova, even, Xavier has been playing really well lately. We talked about them earlier. But Creighton always has a knack for the Big East tournament. They're always shooting hot from 3. And, Stephen Ashworth, Ryan Kalkbrenner, these are guys who have played in this tournament so many times. It's hard to bet against veteran leadership. And I think St. John's, while they don't get it done at home in the Big East tournament, maybe that's a good thing for them in the NCAA tournament, You kind of get that taste out of your mouth. We're going to wrap up this episode with our Final Four conference now as we kind of look towards the SEC.
Yep.
A tournament that maybe, I don't want to say has lost some luster, but, a lot of teams that were playing really well kind of aren't. Alabama's dropped some games. Auburn's dropped some games. Tennessee
team that's not dropping games.
One team has not been dropping games, and it's the team both of us picked, the Florida Gators.
They are on a roll. They're making their case for a 1 seed. If they win this tournament, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. But they took down, what was it, Alabama the other day? I mean, this Florida team is really, really good. The best team I think we've seen them put together since they went back-to-back in, 06, 07?
Yeah.
Corey Brewer and Joakim Noah. I mean, that is...
Al Horford.
To think of a time that Al Horford was not...
on the Celtics.
You gotta really, go back in the time capsule. But again, the Gators are good. I think they get it done, and I mean they're playing like the best team in the SEC right now.
They really are.
Really
Alex Condon dominated Alabama down low, and if he can do that to the North Dakotan's name is escaping me.
Grant Nelson.
If he could do it to him, he could do it to anybody. And they got Micah Handlogton back from that broken leg he suffered a year ago. That's like getting a massive transfer portal acquisition mid-season to steal a bit from Chip Carey. That is unreal. And
they just have Walter Clayton. So
he is, one of the best scoring guards. Offense comes so effortlessly to them. It's like they're stalking the competition. And so I think that they're going to be able to do it really well. Where's the tournament this year? Is it Nashville? Is it Hoover?
I have no idea.
Atlanta? They keep changing it. Doesn't matter where it is.
Moving on to a much cooler one.
Yeah, moving on to the much cooler one. The A-10. I love the A-10. We're both going with VCU here. Yeah. Hey, they have been playing out of their minds. Playing their way off the bubble, which thank God, because I've been seeing people try to use them losing to Seton Hall against them.
No.
It's not their fault losing in overtime to a high major team. It's not their fault Seton Hall ended up being terrible. But for VCU, they got a big transfer portal acquisition from Clemson. They got Jack Clark to transfer over, and now he's shooting 40% from 3. He's playing.
He's not the only one. This team will shoot the lights out the building.
They're blistering, but this is the conference tournament. It was the hardest to pick for me because there's so many teams. There's Dayton. There's George Mason. There's VCU.
St. Joe's is on the bubble surging right now.
St. Joe's they've won, believe 7 in a row. Eric Reynolds the second. He's made for March. That team is really talented. They beat Villanova earlier in the year. They almost beat Texas. They're really a couple blown leads away from being in the field. Dayton, who has really struggled in the middle of the season, but they've come up as late. St. Louis as well. Yeah. The A-10 is always one of the best conferences year in, year out in the mid-major ranks, but we're playing it safe. We're going with the Rams.
There's a reason they're the 1 seed.
There's a reason they're the 1 seed, and when they've played these teams, they've blown them out. It seems like there's levels to this. And
let's take it out west.
Yeah, let's take it out west to another tough one. Man, the Mountain West the propaganda machine isn't what it was last year, but this conference, I think, is better than it was a year ago. And Spencer, you're going with Boise State, a team that, if they do this, they don't need to worry about being on the bubble watch.
Recently featured on the hit segment Bubble Watch, Boise State, they're in the notes. It said, hey, stay hot. I think they do. This team is really, really solid. Again, they have, I would say, the two best wins in the Mountain West, and they both belong to the Broncos. You take down Clemson and St. Mary's. I mean, I think this team is just built for March. I think they get it done. Degenhart is awesome for this team. They can really work it down low, but the rest of their team can stretch the floor. That's a recipe made for success. In this tournament, I think the team you picked, New Mexico State, will probably meet them in the championship game, but who are they led by?
They are led by, it's kind of crazy because they lost everyone. They lost Jamal Mashburn Jr., they lost JT Toppin, but this team has just found a way to do it by committee. I mean, they were flying a little bit under the radar, but Richard Pitino's squad is even better than they were a year ago when they won the Mountain West tournament and were one of the most popular upset picks in the tournament. They got a brutal matchup.
They got squashed by Clemson.
Yeah. Well, I felt really bad for them. But Richard Pitino, he has just, it's really been, it's been him. This team has undergone a lot of roster turnover, a lot of turmoil, ups and downs, and he's kept them centered. I think he's a very good coach.
And Donovan Denton is awesome.
Oh, Donovan Dent, in terms of any one player being able to take over this tournament, if it's not Degenhart, it's probably him.
I think it's still probably Dent, but I believe in Boise State squad a little bit more. But
I think New Mexico, they win back-to-back Mountain West tournaments. As we move on to the last one, the West Coast Conference, we've both got the St. Mary's Gales doing it. Spencer, this team, we've talked about it a lot. They really kind of need no introduction anymore.
Yeah, the metrics still really like Gonzaga. Not exactly sure why. As much as they do.
Maybe they can lose to St. Mary's for a third time this year.
That would be awesome. But St. Mary's, I think, is pretty far and away the best team in the conference this year. Again, they don't need an introduction. They only have 4 losses on the whole season. They're just dominating people. And I don't think they're going to stop now.
No, and it is a pretty stacked tournament field. We mentioned Gonzaga. San Francisco is very good as well as Santa Clara, Oregon State, and Wazoo. 2 very talented teams as well. This is a tournament. It's also set up really weird with the big bracket where the 1 and 2 seeds get an 8-game bye or something. Like they get an auto bye to the semifinals. It's crazy.
That'll help the Gales. Yeah, you get the rest up.
It'll help the Gales. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
And, we are going to take a quick break. But after that, we'll be right back to wrap up another episode with this week's Pick'em. Stay with us.
Welcome back to BDL Pick'ems. Last week was stellar for both me and Spencer. We both went 9-1. I'm 39-26. The Spence Dog is 45-20. We're going to run through a lot of the men's games. The women's conference tournaments are going, so we didn't really know what games were going to happen when we were doing the prep for the show.
South Carolina tips off in about an hour. I think we'd both say, we would rock with the Gamecocks.
Absolutely. We'll start here tomorrow, noon, in Milwaukee, St. John's, Marquette. Spencer, who do you got?
Johnny's all the way.
I agree. Really, we taled about this team a lot earlier, and now we'll move on to 2 teams we didn't talk about. Number 19, Kentucky, going on the road to number 15, Mizzou. Spencer, who do you got?
Mizzou's been sliding a little bit. Kentucky's been injury, riddled with Jackson Robinson out for the year. I still think the Wildcats get it done. Man, this team plays with a lot of heart. I really like Mark Pope.
I like them too, but I think that I think Mizzou's going to bounce back. I think that this team is they're too talented. And they don't have the injury bug like Kentucky does. I'm taking the Tigers at home. We move on now to some ACC action. Stanford, fresh off a bubble-shattering loss to Notre Dame, goes on the road to number 14, Louisville, looking to play spoiler. Spencer, who do you got?
I think the Cards get it done at home. They've done a really good job of building back this home environment under the first year of Pat Kelsey, and I think they're just a better team than Stanford.
Yeah, Chucky Hepburn.
He's a beast.
What a guy.
Awesome.
I think Louisville takes care of business. And we'll see what happens. They could end up with an ACC regular season title as well. Now moving on to a game that's not as hyped as it was when it happened a couple weeks ago. But Spencer, it's still the Iron Bowl on the hardwood. Number 1 Auburn, number 7 Alabama. Who do you got?
And Auburn got it done in Tuscaloosa, heading back to the Plains. I think they get it done again. Give me the Tigers. Both these teams have looked a little worse for wear since they first met up earlier this year.
It's just the wear and tear of the season. It's kind of bringing some of them down, but the thing is,
still taking Auburn out.
Yeah, I'm taking Auburn as well. Yeah, that's the thing. It's worn down to Alabama, I think, a lot more than it's worn down to Auburn. So I'm going to take the Tigers at home again. Now for, a game that's really kind of a lot more important than you may think. Number 24, Arizona, going on the road to Kansas. Unranked Kansas.
Emphasis on unranked Kansas. I'm going to take the Wildcats. It's still Allen Fieldhouse. It's an incredibly tough place to play. Kansas has just not been good.
No, they haven't. And frankly, Arizona is the most Jekyll and Hyde team I've ever seen. They live and die with Caleb Love. And frankly,
it looks like they could win the title when they're hot, or it looks like they look like
Kansas,
a high school team. Yeah.
And frankly,
Kansas.
For some reason, I just can't pick against Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse. I think they're going to get it done at home. Kind of give their fans some hope heading into the conference tourney.
Would they lose to an 11 seed? I can't wait.
Absolutely.
I'm fired up for it.
Now we're moving back to the SEC as Ole Miss, fresh off of a big win against Tennessee, are going to go on the road and looking for another one against number 5 Florida. Spencer, who do you got?
They're not going to get it.
No, they're not.
Gators
but
win at home.
It's nice to think. Although Chris
it's
Beard,
a dream for a while.
Maybe Chris Beard can get the justice he probably deserves. But it probably won't happen in the swamp as Florida is going to take care of business with Ole Miss. Although Ole Miss has been playing better as of late, no one's playing better than the SEC than Florida is at the moment. Now
that's why we picked them to win it.
Some American Conference action. The Blazers of UAB going on the road to Nolans to take on Tulane. Spencer, who do you got?
I'm going to go with the Blazers, man. This has been a really fun team for a couple years in a row now.
Walker? Yeah.
I do remember Jelly Walker. I saw Jelly Walker play at Colonial Life. I think they beat South Carolina.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. They were quite good. And I think they're pretty good this year. I think they're better than Tulane. They get a tough win on the road.
I agree. This is a program they've really flown under the radar. Their head coach is currently he's been floated for some openings, so I'm interested to see what happens there. As we now move on to a big Big 12 matchup as number 3 Houston looks to end their season on a high note, while Baylor kind of fighting for position in the tournament. Who do you got?
I'm going to go with the Cougars, man. We talked about how dominant they were earlier in the show, and
Baylor sucks.
they just aren't that good. Yeah, I think Houston's just a much better team. Baylor would have to really shoot the lights out to keep this one close.
And I don't think they will. I think Houston gets it done on the road. Now, we're ending it with 2 big rivalry games. 2 rivalry games that we've covered in the past, one we covered today. We'll start with Sunday's noon tip-off between number 8 Michigan State and number 17 Michigan. The Spartans have already wrapped up a conference title, the outright conference title in the Big Ten. But do they get revenge on Michigan?
No, they're about to double up Michigan.
Yeah,
Sparty wins it at home. Take down the Wolverines, who are frauds for the tournament. I'm just letting everyone know.
They really kind of
turn the ball over more than me and JP and Strom. That is a bad look. Trust me.
Why did I think Michigan had won?
Exactly. They never do. Go Spartans.
That's true. Hey, go green, go white. I think Michigan State gets it done at home. But now we move on. It's a game that needs no introduction. Yankees, Red Sox. It's the only thing that maybe comes close. It's Duke.
It's up there.
UNC, Saturday, 6:30 ESPN from the Dean Dome. Spencer, who do you got?
And, to touch on that, the Dean Dome, they've talked about building a new arena off campus at North Carolina. Roy Williams, the legend he is, got on and said, why would you I actually knew Coach Smith. Maybe we don't move the arena off campus. It's absolutely absurd.
The people in charge of things.
But the people that are going to pack that building on Saturday, they're going to show up, they're going to get loud, and when the going gets tough, UNC has no other choice. I probably said something similar a month ago. I didn't think they were good enough to rattle off 6 straight wins. But it is one of the best Duke teams ever. It's one of the best college basketball teams historically ever. UNC needs a win to get it done. I think they do get it done at home. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong last time at Cameron. You got to come away with it. You got to learn. You got to grow. Whatever it is, you can't let what happened last time happen again.
Especially not at home.
Not at home. Not in front of what's a sold-out game, a must-watch game. R.J. Davis, it's his time to write his name not only into the record book as the second all-time leading scorer. He needs a legacy performance, and there's no better time than now, man. Carolina needs it.
Yeah,
you got to have it.
Frankly, there's nothing more quintessentially college sports than a big rivalry where one team is the best team in a long time and the other team is just kind of, putting around like, we're fine. And that little team, they rise up and they just smack you in the mouth.
David and Goliath, man. That's awesome.
I'm not gonna put North Carolina as David in that situation. They're more like the burned out STEM major who doesn't have a job anymore and they're just chilling on the couch. I think that's North Carolina right now. But
that's awesome.
That doesn't stop them from rising up and punching their annoying coworker in the face sometimes. And I think that's what's gonna happen. In the Dean Dome, I think R.J. Davis has a big game. I think it's one of the best games of the season. It comes down to the fact that Duke has other. This isn't the end of the year for Duke. It doesn't. You never want to lose
now. Duke could lose in the ACC tournament. Frankly, it would not matter.
You never want to lose to North Carolina, but the season doesn't end here for Duke. For North Carolina, there is nothing else other than running straight through that Blue Devil wall. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think they get the win at home.
How about it for our 50th episode? That's going to wrap us up here. Again, be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at SGTV at USC.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barry.
And I'm Spencer Ball from all of us here at SGTV. Have a great spring break, Carolina. Happy 50th.
Forever to thee. Fitty.
Fitty on him. Fitty on him. Fitty on your head. Fitty on your head. 2 quarters on your head. 50.
Yep. 100,000 on him.